A rich man marries a homeless woman for a bet, but what happens next surprises him. Imran Aziz, a wealthy and confident man, stood on the balcony of a grand party, showing no signs of worry. Everything seemed easy for him until his old friend, Zaid Malik, approached with a glass of wine and a smile that suggested he had something interesting to say. "Imran, you always say money can buy anything, right?" Zaid asked, breaking the silence. Imran took a sip of his champagne, his expression calm. "It can," he replied. Zaid pointed to a young woman sitting on the sidewalk below. She was barefoot, dressed in worn-out clothes, and had a tired look in her eyes. "Look at her," Zaid said, his voice teasing. "I bet you $2 million that you can't turn her into a lady of high society and stay married to her for 3 months." Imran squinted, focusing on the woman. For a moment, he didn't see a person. He only saw a challenge he was confident he could win. "$2 million?" he asked, a smirk forming on his face. "You clearly don't know what I'm capable of. Let's see." Zaid raised his glass to Imran, daring him to take the challenge. Imran didn't respond, but kept his eyes on the young woman below. She seemed lost in her world, holding a plastic cup with a few coins inside. "Looks like tonight's entertainment has begun," Imran muttered, then walked back inside. Minutes later, he was standing in front of her. She looked up as he approached, her face tired but strong. Her hair was messy, and her cardboard sign read, "Anything helps." "Excuse me," Imran said in a commanding tone. The woman looked up, surprised. Her blue eyes, filled with pain, caught his attention. "What do you want?" she asked, shrinking back. Imran smiled, mixing both condescension and curiosity. "I have an offer for you, something that could change your life." She frowned but didn't respond. "I'm serious," he added, kneeling to her level. "I have money, a lot of it, and I need someone like you for a project." She laughed bitterly. "I'm not a test subject, Mr. Millionaire." Ignoring her sharp reply, Imran continued, "I'll pay you well. You'll get food, clothes, and a place to stay. All you have to do is marry me for 3 months." She blinked in disbelief. "You're joking, right?" "I don't joke about business," Imran said firmly. "It's simple. A marriage of convenience. No real commitment. After 3 months we'll go our separate ways, and you'll walk away with more money than you've ever seen." She paused, thinking about it. Her life had been difficult since losing everything, but something about Imran's confident tone irritated her. "Why me?" she finally asked. "Because you're here," he replied bluntly. His response almost made her walk away, but hunger and the cold kept her from leaving. "My name is Amina Noor," she said quietly, "and if I agree, how do I know this isn't a scam?" Imran pulled out his phone and made a quick call. A few moments later, a black car pulled up, and a well-dressed driver opened the door. "Get in," Imran ordered. "We'll talk somewhere more comfortable." Amina hesitated, but the idea of escaping the street, even just for a few hours, was too tempting. She got into the car and Imran followed, asking the driver to take them to a hotel. The silence in the car felt heavy. Amina stared out of the window, while Imran typed on his phone without looking up. When they arrived at the hotel, Amina was taken to a fancy suite. She couldn't hide her surprise. The soft carpets, elegant wooden furniture, and the beautiful view of the city were things she had never imagined. Imran ordered food and fresh clothes. Amina, still unsure, stayed near the door, watching him closely. "Relax," Imran said, pouring himself a drink. "I'm not here to hurt you. This is just part of the deal." A few minutes later, the food arrived. Amina ate without hesitation, finally feeling her stomach settle. Imran watched her closely, studying her every move. "So, do you agree or not?" he asked once she was done eating. Amina wiped her mouth and took a deep breath. "How much are you paying me?" $1 million, Imran said casually, as if it were nothing special. Amina almost choked. The amount seemed unreal. With that much money, she could start over, maybe even help others like her. But the idea of giving up her dignity made her uneasy. "I need some guarantees," she said, trying to stay in control. Imran nodded. "Everything will be in writing. My lawyer will draft a contract. You'll have food, clothes, and a room at my mansion." "And the wedding?" she asked, uncertain. "Tomorrow," Imran replied coldly. "It'll be quick, just a formality." Amina ran her hand through her hair, feeling trapped. Imran's words left no room for negotiation. Finally, she sighed and nodded. "Okay." Imran stood up, satisfied. "Good. Rest tonight. Tomorrow begins the next chapter of our lives." Amina watched him leave the room, leaving her alone in the luxurious suite. The silence was deafening. She knew she had made a risky choice, but at the same time, it felt like she had no other option. The next morning, Amina woke to a soft knock on the door. A hotel worker came in with a breakfast tray and new clothes. Amina noticed the care put into every detail. Fine fabrics, neutral colors, all perfectly tailored to her size. As she ate, the weight of her decision sank in. She was selling 3 months of her life, but the thought of $1 million was hard to ignore. Starting over no longer felt like an impossible dream. Soon, Imran appeared, looking sharp as ever, holding a leather folder. He handed it to Amina. "Here's the contract. Read it, sign it, and we'll meet at the courthouse at 2 o'clock. Amina flipped through the contract, scanning the clauses and terms. Everything seemed real, but the formality made her uneasy. Still, she signed, feeling like each pen stroke marked a point of no return. The wedding was quick and emotionless. A few words were spoken in front of a judge, a few signatures, and it was done. Amina Noor was now officially Amina Parker, the wife of Imran Aziz. There were no guests, just the driver and the lawyer as witnesses. As they left the courthouse, Imran put a hand on Amina's back, guiding her to the car. She noticed that he did it without affection, almost as if it were a task he had to complete. "And now?" Amina asked as the car moved through the busy streets. "Now we go to my mansion. You'll be staying there for the next few months," Imran said, not looking up from his phone. The Parker mansion was just as grand as Amina had imagined. Tall gates opened automatically, revealing a long driveway lined with perfectly kept gardens. The house itself was huge, with white columns and big windows reflecting the sky. Inside, Amina was met by a team of staff. Imran gave quick instructions, telling them to prepare a room for his new wife. Amina stayed quiet, trying to take in everything around her. By the time evening came, Imran invited her to dinner. The dining room was massive, with a long table and a sparkling chandelier above it. Amina sat at one end and Imran at the other. The space between them felt like a symbol, but Imran just started eating, paying no attention to it. "How are you settling in?" he asked casually. "I'm not used to all this luxury," Amina admitted, glancing around. Imran smiled faintly. "You'll get used to it." After dinner, he calmly walked to the room prepared for Amina. As they walked down the hall, their voices echoed softly. Amina stopped and turned to him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, finally asking the question that had been on her mind. Imran crossed his arms and leaned against the wall. "Because I can." Amina narrowed her eyes, feeling a mix of anger and curiosity. "This isn't random. You don't do things like this without a reason." Imran didn't answer. He just gave a small smile and walked away. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, your transformation begins." Later that night, Amina sat alone in her room on the edge of the bed. Memories from her past began to come back. It wasn't just the luxury of the mansion that made her uneasy. There was something deeper. She realized she had met Imran before. Suddenly, a memory popped into her mind. Years ago, she had sat nervously in an interview room, dressed in her best outfit and holding a carefully prepared resume. The company was Parker Enterprises, and the interviewer was Imran Aziz. She remembered his cold look as he dismissed her with a harsh comment, "We don't waste time on amateurs." That humiliation had crushed her confidence, and after that, her life fell apart. Now, ironically, she was married to the man who had caused her downfall. Anger bubbled up inside her. How could he not remember her? Or did he remember and just not care? Determined, Amina left her room and went to the study where she found Imran looking over some papers. "I need to ask you something," she said, crossing her arms. Imran looked up, surprised by the interruption. "What is it?" he asked. "Do you really not remember me?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. Imran frowned, confused. "Should I?" Amina clenched her fists, trying to hold back tears. "A few years ago, I came to your company looking for a job. You humiliated me in front of everyone." Imran studied her for a moment, trying to remember. Finally, he shrugged. "I interview dozens of people every month. I don't remember all of them." His indifference hit Amina hard. "Of course you don't," she said bitterly. "To you, we're all just disposable." Imran stayed silent, but Amina could see something in his expression. He stood and took a step toward her, but she turned and walked away, heading back to her room. Alone again, Amina realized this wasn't just a cold business deal. It was a chance to face the man who had hurt her. But she was no longer the vulnerable young woman she had been before. The next morning, Amina woke up to the first light of the sun shining through the large windows. The conversation from last night still weighed on her, but she decided not to let it control her. She got up, took a shower, and went downstairs for breakfast. She found Imran already at the table, reading the newspaper. "Good morning," she said calmly. Imran nodded, his eyes still on the paper. The silence between them was heavy, but Amina refused to feel intimidated. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat at the table. "So, what happens next?" she asked, breaking the silence. Imran lowered the newspaper and gave her a small smile. "Now your transformation begins. We have a team of stylists, etiquette coaches, and even a posture trainer. Soon you'll be introduced to high society as my wife." Amina rolled her eyes. "As if expensive clothes will fix everything I've been through." Imran ignored her comment. "Next week's business dinner will be your first test. I need you to be perfect." The following days were tough for Amina. Every day she went through hours of clothing fittings, etiquette lessons, and posture practice. Though she hated the superficiality of it all, she noticed herself starting to fit into the new world. Imran, on the other hand, kept his distance, but couldn't ignore the effect Amina was having on the household. She wasn't like the other women he had known. She didn't simply follow his orders. One afternoon, Amina was practicing walking in the grand hall when Imran walked in and watched her in silence. When she noticed him, she stopped and crossed her arms. "Enjoying the show?" she asked sarcastically. Imran smiled slightly. "Just checking your progress. You're doing well." Amina scoffed. "Glad my performance meets your approval, Mr. Parker." Imran took a few steps closer, stopping just a few feet away. "Why does it feel like you're always ready to attack me?" "Maybe because you deserve it," Amina replied without hesitation. Imran paused, surprised by her honesty. Then he took a step back and changed the topic. "Get ready. We're going out tonight." "Where?" Amina asked, suspicious. "A private dinner at a restaurant. I want to see how you handle yourself in public." Later that evening, they arrived at one of the fanciest restaurants in the city. Amina wore an elegant dress, and people admired her, but she felt uncomfortable with all the attention. Imran, on the other hand, seemed totally relaxed. During dinner, he noticed that Amina was nervous. She kept shifting her gaze and fidgeting with her dress strap. "Relax," he said quietly. "You're doing great." Amina looked up, surprised by his encouraging tone. "I'm not used to any of this." Imran leaned forward slightly. "You'll get used to it. Trust me." For a moment, Amina saw something different in his eyes. He wasn't the cold, calculating man she had met before. There was something more human, almost vulnerable about him. After dinner, on the ride back to the mansion, the atmosphere in the car was lighter. Imran commented on her behavior during dinner, pointing out small improvements she could make, but without being harsh. "You're really taking this seriously, aren't you?" Amina asked, curious. Imran glanced at her briefly. "I always take my bets seriously." The mention of a bet made Amina tense. She still wasn't sure what Imran was hoping to get out of all of this, but the idea of being just a pawn in some game left a bad taste in her mouth. Later that night, while alone in her room, Amina decided to explore the mansion. She wandered through the quiet hallways until she came to a slightly open door that led to an office. Inside, there was a large wooden desk covered in documents and papers. Curious, Amina walked in and began going through the papers. Among contracts and financial reports, she found something that made her blood run cold. A printed conversation between Imran and another man about the bet. "So, has she agreed?" One message read. "Yes, it's only a matter of time before I win," Imran replied, his words showing no emotion. Amina felt sick. She had known something was off about Imran's actions, but seeing the words in black and white made it worse. Suddenly the door opened, and Imran walked in. When he saw Amina holding the papers, his face changed. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, his voice low and serious. Amina held the papers tightly, staring at him. "Is this how you see me? Just a bet to feed your ego?" Imran stepped closer, trying to grab the papers, but Amina pulled them away. "Answer me," she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. Imran sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "It's not as simple as it seems." "Not simple?" Amina laughed bitterly. "You've played with my life like I'm nothing." "Amina," Imran started, but she cut him off. "Don't try to explain," she shouted, throwing the papers on the desk before storming out of the office. Imran stood there, staring at the papers. For the first time in years, he felt out of control. Amina could barely breathe as she rushed upstairs, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. Once she was in her room, she locked the door and leaned against it, trying to calm down. Finding out about the bet had broken the little trust she had left. "I can't stay here," she thought as tears of anger and humiliation filled her eyes. She quickly looked around, trying to find a way to escape. That night, while everyone slept, Amina made her move. She dressed in simple clothes and packed a small bag with the few things she had gathered since coming to the mansion. Carefully, she opened the window, trying not to make a sound, and climbed down the trellis covered in rose vines. The cold night air hit her as she reached the ground. Amina looked back at the mansion's dark, towering shape against the night sky. Part of her wanted to scream to make Imran feel her pain. Amina carried the weight of her decision as she ran toward the road without looking back. The streets were empty, and she walked for hours, ignoring the cold that bit at her skin and the exhaustion in her body. When she finally reached the city center, she found a subway station to rest. She curled up on a bench, trying to sleep. Back at the mansion, Imran woke up early and noticed that Amina was missing at breakfast. At first he wasn't worried, thinking she just needed space after the argument they had the night before. But when one of the staff members said they hadn't seen her since dinner, he started to feel uneasy. "Check her room," he ordered, trying to stay calm. A few minutes later, the butler returned, looking worried. "Mr. Parker, her room is empty and the window, it's open." Imran rushed upstairs to Amina's room. The bed was untouched, and her clothes were still in the closet. He walked over to the window and saw marks on the trellis outside. "She ran away," he whispered, clenching his fists. Without wasting time, he grabbed his phone and made calls, reaching out to his contacts to try to find her. The thought of Amina alone in the streets troubled him. He couldn't explain it, but something inside him pushed him to find her, not because of the bet, but because he was feeling something new: regret. Meanwhile, Amina kept walking aimlessly, her strength fading and her fever rising. The exhaustion from the last few days was catching up with her, but she refused to stop. Each step she took was a sign of her determination, a statement that she wouldn't let Imran or any other man control her again. At dawn, she reached a small square and sat on a wooden bench. Her hands trembled and her vision blurred. She knew she needed help, but her pride kept her from asking. She closed her eyes and felt herself giving in to exhaustion. Imran had already started searching the city streets. Driving his car, he checked every corner, every bench, looking for any sign of Amina. Guilt weighed heavily on him. He never thought his actions could cause this much pain. Hours later, with the sun high in the sky, he found her. Amina was lying on a bench, covered with a thin blanket that someone had probably given her. Her face was pale, and she trembled from the fever. "Amina!" Imran called as he rushed toward her. She slowly opened her eyes, her gaze unfocused. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice faint. "I'm here to take you home," he said, his voice full of concern. "I don't have a home," she replied bitterly. Imran carefully lifted her up, ignoring her weak attempts to resist, and carried her to the car. On the way to the hospital, he stayed silent, his mind racing. He knew he would need more than words to earn Amina's trust. At the hospital, doctors confirmed that Amina was severely dehydrated and running a high fever. Imran stayed by her side, watching over her as the staff took care of her. For the first time in years, he felt like he had no control over his own life. Hours later, when Amina woke up, she found Imran sitting beside her bed. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were focused on her. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice still weak. "Because I care," Imran said sincerely. Amina let out a small laugh, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't know what it means to care about anyone but yourself." Imran lowered his head, gripping his knees tightly. "Maybe you're right, but I'm trying to change." Amina watched him quietly, unsure if she should believe him. Her mind was too tired to think clearly. The next morning, Amina woke up to the sound of footsteps entering the room. Still weak, she turned her head slowly and saw a nurse adjusting her IV. It was comforting, but it also reminded her of how vulnerable she was. Imran wasn't in the room, which gave her a little relief. Soon after, he entered carrying a small bag. He was dressed casually, something she rarely saw him do. His eyes were tired, but determined. "I brought something for you," he said, placing the bag on the bedside table. Amina just stared at him, not saying anything. Imran sat down in a chair, keeping a respectful distance. "It's soup. You need to regain your strength," he said, opening the bag. "I don't want anything from you," Amina replied in a hoarse, cold voice. Imran sighed but didn't push her. He knew that forcing anything now would be pointless. Instead, he just sat there, letting the silence fill the room. "Why are you here, Imran?" Amina asked, breaking the quiet. He paused before answering. "Because I care." Amina let out a bitter laugh. "You don't understand what that means." Imran leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Maybe you're right, Maybe I've spent my whole life not really caring about anyone except for you. You've made me see things I never wanted to face." Amina looked away, gripping the bedsheet tightly. "That doesn't change what you did." "I know," Imran said quietly, his voice heavy, "and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'll show you that I can change." Amina stayed silent, her mind a mess of emotions. She wanted to believe him, but the pain was still too fresh. Over the next few days, Imran stayed by Amina's side, making sure she got all the care she needed. He worked with the doctors, made sure the food was good, and even brought her books to help her pass the time. Though Amina was still angry, she couldn't ignore the effort he was putting in. One afternoon, while flipping through one of the books Imran had brought, Amina found something unexpected. A letter. It was folded neatly and tucked between the pages, written in Imran's handwriting. "Amina, I know words can't undo what I've done, but I want you to know I'm trying. I've never been one to admit my mistakes, but you've made me see who I really am. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to become someone worthy of your respect. Imran." Amina read the letter over and over, trying to understand whether he was being sincere or just trying to manipulate her. That night, when Imran walked into the room, Amina held the letter up to him. "What is this?" she asked, her voice firm. Imran looked at the letter. "It's my attempt to be honest." Amina shook her head. "You used me. You humiliated me. How can I believe anything you say?" Imran stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. "I know I don't deserve your trust, but I'm here, and I'll stay here, even if it takes years for you to trust me." Tears filled Amina's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you." Imran nodded slowly. "I understand." The next day, the doctors said Amina was well enough to leave the hospital. Imran immediately made arrangements to take her back to the mansion. Amina didn't want to go, but she knew she didn't have anywhere else to go. When they arrived, Imran surprised her with something she didn't expect. He had turned one of the rooms into a small art studio with canvases, brushes, and paints in every color. "What is this?" she asked, amazed. "You mentioned once that you liked painting," Imran said with a shy smile. "I thought you might like a space to yourself." Amina didn't know what to say. It was a simple gesture, but it meant a lot. For the first time, she saw something in Imran beyond the cold, arrogant billionaire. In the following days, Amina spent more time in the studio, painting and exploring her creativity. It gave her a feeling of freedom she hadn't had in years. Imran, for his part, kept his distance, respecting her space while quietly making sure she was comfortable. One afternoon, as Amina was painting, Imran appeared at the door, watching her in silence. "You're talented," he said, breaking the silence. Amina looked at him, surprised. "I didn't know you had an eye for art." Imran shrugged, smiling slightly. "I'm learning." Amina laughed, feeling a warmth inside her that she hadn't felt in a long time. The days at the mansion passed peacefully. Amina spent most of her time in the art studio, while Imran focused on his business. There was an unspoken truce between them, a balance neither wanted to disturb. But Imran wasn't happy. He knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to earn back Amina's trust. Imran knew he had to take action to show he was willing to change, not just for Amina, but also for himself. One afternoon, as Amina worked on a new painting in the studio, Imran entered and watched her quietly. He waited for her to notice him, but she kept working, ignoring him on purpose. "I need your help," he said, breaking the silence. Amina stopped and wiped her hands on a cloth. "My help?" Imran nodded. "I want to support social projects, and I think you can help me decide where to start." Amina looked at him with suspicion. "Since when do you care about that?" "Since I realized the world doesn't revolve around me," he answered honestly. Amina hesitated for a moment. Even though she didn't fully trust him, the idea of doing something good was appealing. "All right," she said finally, "but I'm not doing this for you." "I wouldn't expect anything else," Imran replied with a small smile. In the following days, Imran and Amina visited charities and community projects. He took her to shelters, rehabilitation centers, and schools in poor areas. Amina noticed how Imran acted differently with people. He genuinely listened to their stories and seemed interested in understanding their needs. One visit stood out. They went to a shelter for women who had suffered from domestic violence. While Amina spoke with some of the residents, Imran walked over to a young woman holding a baby. He crouched down to her level and began asking about her life. "It's hard to trust people after what I've been through," the young woman said, holding the baby tighter. Imran nodded seriously. "I understand." Amina, watching from a distance, was surprised by Imran's genuine compassion. She hadn't expected him to show so much care. On the way back, the car ride was quiet, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Amina felt like something was changing in Imran, though she still couldn't fully trust him. One evening, Imran decided to do something special. He arranged a private dinner for just the two of them. The dining room was decorated with candles, flowers, and soft music playing in the background. "What's this?" Amina asked when she saw the setup. "Thank you," Imran replied, pulling out a chair for her, "for helping me the past few days." Amina hesitated, but eventually sat down. The dinner was unlike any they had before. Imran opened up more than usual, sharing stories about his childhood and how he grew up in a cold environment where emotions were seen as weakness. "I think that's why I always used money to protect myself," he admitted, staring at his wineglass. "It was easier than dealing with real people." Amina listened quietly, absorbing everything he said. She had never imagined Imran would be so honest. Finally, she asked, "What do you want?" Imran looked up and met her eyes. "I want to be better, someone you might one day respect." Amina stayed quiet for a moment before responding, "That doesn't depend only on you." "I know," he said with a sigh, "but I'll keep trying." After dinner, while Imran cleared the table, Amina went to her studio and brought back a small painting she had made over the past few days. It was a peaceful landscape with an open field and a sunset sky. "Here," she said, handing the painting to Imran. He looked at it, surprised. "It's beautiful," he said. "I thought you might like it." Amina shrugged, and Imran smiled, clearly touched. "Thank you." In the days that followed, Imran continued to show small changes in his behavior. He treated the mansion staff better, listened to suggestions from his employees at work, and spent more time on the social projects he and Amina were working on together. Amina began to lower her guard, but cautiously. She knew it would take time to trust Imran again, but little by little, she felt something inside her begin to shift. One afternoon, as they walked through the mansion's garden, Imran suddenly stopped and turned to Amina. "I want to show you something," he said. Curious, Amina followed him to a small cabin at the back of the property. Inside, Amina saw old photos, toys, and drawings from Imran's childhood. "I've never shown this to anyone," he said as Amina looked around the room. Amina picked up one of the photos and saw a young Imran standing next to a graceful woman who she assumed was his mother. "You had a different life than I imagined," Amina said, looking at the photo. Imran smiled sadly. "My mother always said money can buy many things, but not happiness. It took me a long time to understand that." Amina placed the photo back and turned to him. "Maybe there's still time to learn." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Amina walked slowly through the garden. The past days had been full of surprises, and she could feel something changing inside her. Yet a wall still remained, keeping her from fully letting go. Later that evening, Imran walked into the art studio while Amina finished a new painting. He looked unsure, something Amina had never seen in him before. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. Amina nodded, glancing at him. Imran stepped forward, looking at the landscape she was painting. "It's beautiful," he said. "Thank you," Amina replied, her attention on the canvas. Imran took a deep breath and continued. "I need to share something with you, something I've never told anyone." Amina set the brush down and turned to him. "Go ahead, I'm listening." Imran began walking around the room, his hands in his pockets. "When I was a child, my mother was the only one who connected me to the real world. My father was a cold man who cared only about success. He taught me to be ruthless, to hide my weakness." He paused for a moment, his eyes distant. "My mother was different. She believed in love and kindness, not money. She passed away when I was 12. After that, my father made sure I became the man he wanted me to be, cold and focused only on business." Amina listened carefully. There was something raw in his words that touched her. She asked softly, "Do you still think you need to be that man?" Imran shook his head slowly. "Number, you've shown me there's more to life than I realized." Amina stayed quiet for a moment before speaking. "I have something to say too." Imran looked at her, waiting. "When you humiliated me during that interview, it shattered my confidence. It hurt more than you can imagine." Amina's voice shook, and Imran felt a heavy weight in his chest. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice sincere. Amina looked at him, finally seeing a side of him that wasn't arrogant. She knew forgiveness would take time, but she decided to take the first step. "I want to believe you, but trust isn't built overnight." Imran nodded seriously. "I understand. I'm willing to wait." Over the following days, Imran became more involved in social projects. He and Amina visited communities in need, meeting people who faced challenges similar to Amina's. Each visit showed her that Imran was truly changing. One day they met Fatima, a young woman who was about to drop out of school because she couldn't afford it. Amina was moved by her story. "Imran, can we help her?" Amina asked. Imran smiled. "Yes, we can." With Imran's support, Fatima was given a scholarship and financial help. Amina felt a warmth in her heart as she saw the happiness in the young woman's eyes. Helping her made Amina feel like she was healing too. That evening, back at the mansion, Amina sat quietly in the living room, watching the fire. Imran walked in and sat next to her, keeping some distance. "Today was special," he said, breaking the silence. Amina nodded. Yes, it was. They sat for a moment in silence before Imran spoke again. "Amina, can I ask you something?" Amina's heart raced. She knew this would be a tough conversation. "I don't know, Imran. We still have a lot to work through," she replied. Imran nodded, understanding. He knew that to have any hope, he had to keep showing he was changing. Over the next few days, life at Imran's mansion became routine. Amina got more involved in social projects, and Imran made small but meaningful changes in his behavior. However, Amina was still cautious about fully trusting him. One sunny afternoon, Imran invited Amina to take a walk in the garden. She hesitated at first, but agreed. As they walked among the flowers, Imran talked about a new project, building a community center to help people with education and job training. "I want you to lead it with me," he said, smiling. Amina stopped in surprise. "Me?" "Yes," Imran said. "You understand their needs better than anyone, and I trust you." Amina paused, her thoughts racing. She felt warmth in her heart, but still had doubts. "I'll think about it," she finally said. Later that day, while Amina was painting in the studio, she received an unexpected call. It was from Sarah, an old friend from her time on the streets. Sarah's voice, full of emotion, stirred something inside Amina. "Amina, I heard you're doing well and working on social projects. I need to see you," Sarah said. Amina arranged to meet her the next day at a cafe. When she told Imran, he insisted on going with her. "I won't interfere, but I want to make sure you're safe," he said. Amina didn't like the idea but accepted his offer. The next day, while waiting for Sarah at the cafe, Amina felt a little nervous. It had been years since they last met. When Sarah arrived, they embraced warmly, talking about their shared struggles. "You've changed, Amina," Sarah said after a while. "You seem stronger." "I'm still learning," Amina replied, smiling. Amina noticed Imran sitting quietly at a nearby table. Though he was just there to keep her safe, his presence comforted her. On the drive back to the mansion, Amina spoke up. "Thank you for bringing me here today," she said. Imran looked at her, surprised. "There's no need to thank me." "But I want to," Amina insisted. "You've been different, and I've noticed." Imran paused before responding. "I just want to do the right thing." Amina could hear the sincerity in his voice. She wasn't sure, but something inside her told her he was changing. Then, things took a turn when Zaid, the friend who had made the bet, showed up at the mansion. He had a mocking smile. "Imran, how's it going with your new wife?" Zaid asked. Amina, who was in the garden, froze when she heard his voice. She quietly stepped behind a column to listen. "What do you want, Zaid?" Imran asked, irritated. "I'm just curious. The bet's almost over, right? You must be looking forward to your $2 million, Zaid said, smirking. Amina's heart sank. She had known about the bet, but hearing it spoken so casually reopened wounds she was trying to heal. "The bet doesn't matter anymore," Imran said firmly. "I cancelled it." Zaid laughed. "Cancelled? You must be joking." "I'm not," Imran said seriously. "I don't need the money, and I don't need the bet." Zaid raised an eyebrow. "So, you're really falling for her?" Imran didn't answer, but his face said it all. Amina stepped out from behind the column, her heart torn between anger and confusion. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice shaking. Imran turned, surprised to see her. "Amina, I can explain," he said. "I don't want explanations, Imran. I want the truth," Amina shouted, her eyes filled with tears. Zaid, sensing the tension, left. Imran stepped closer to Amina, but she stepped back. "Did you cancel the bet?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," Imran replied. "Why?" Imran took a deep breath. "Because you're more important than any bet." Amina was silent, torn by her emotions. She wanted to believe him, but the fear of being hurt again was too strong. "I don't know if I can trust you, Imran, not after everything," she said quietly. Amina looked at Imran, unsure if she could trust him, but something about his eyes told her he was sincere. The days after their confrontation were tense. Amina spent a lot of time in the art studio, thinking about everything, while Imran tried to show that his intentions were genuine. Though there was still some distance between them, it was clear that Imran was changing. One morning, Amina sat on the terrace with a cup of tea, watching the trees in the breeze. Her thoughts wandered between painful memories and moments of connection with Imran. She knew she had to make a decision, but the fear of trusting again held her back. Imran appeared at the door holding a folder. His face was serious, but there was no arrogance, which surprised her. "Can I sit with you?" he asked respectfully. Amina nodded, and he sat down at the table, placing the folder between them. "I have something for you," he said, opening the folder and pulling out a document. "This shows I ended the bet. There's no longer any connection between me and Zaid." Amina read through the papers. It confirmed that Imran had returned the bet money and donated some to charity. "Why show me this?" she asked, still unsure. "I want you to see I'm being honest," he said. "I don't expect you to trust me immediately, but I want to show that I'm trying to change." Amina placed the papers aside, looking out at the horizon. She knew he was trying, but the hurt from his past actions was still fresh. "You want to change, but that doesn't erase the past," she said calmly. "It doesn't," Imran agreed, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." They sat in silence, the weight of their emotions filling the space between them. Amina knew she needed to confront her feelings about him. In the days that followed, Imran respected Amina's space, but he also showed his dedication through actions. He became deeply involved in social projects, visiting communities, and learning about the lives of the people benefiting from the initiatives. Amina, though still cautious, could see the change in him. One afternoon, they visited a shelter for at-risk youth, where a young girl named Layla caught Amina's attention. The 16-year-old was pregnant and filled with fear for the future. "I don't know how I'm going to take care of my baby," she said, tears in her eyes. Amina sat beside her, taking her hand. "You're not alone. We'll help you," Amina assured her. Imran observed from a distance, impressed by Amina's connection with the people. After the visit, he decided to take a step forward. That evening he prepared a special dinner at the mansion, just for the two of them. The dining room was beautifully set with candles and flowers, and soft music played in the background. When Amina walked in, she stopped, surprised by the warm setting. "What's all this?" she asked. "A way to thank you for everything you've done," Imran said, pulling out a chair for her. Amina sat down, feeling uneasy, but she couldn't deny the warmth in the atmosphere. The dinner began quietly, but slowly Imran started to open up. He spoke about his childhood, how he grew up with a strict father, and how the loss of his mother had affected him. "I used money to avoid pain," he said, looking at Amina, "but now I realize it changed me into someone I didn't want to be." Amina listened carefully. She could tell Imran was being honest, but doubt still lingered. "I want to believe you, Imran," she said, "but a part of me is still afraid." Imran nodded, accepting her words. "I'll keep trying. I'm not going to give up